Hey guys, welcome to the Janus Project. We are continuing our series here on Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist out of Canada. He's a professor. He taught, I think, at the University of Toronto, and he's been doing this work for a long, long time. So a lot of the books that he writes come out of his study of Nazism and kind of totalitarian regimes. A lot of his work comes out of his clinical practice, and so he'll reference various people he's met through the years. But one of the big things with Jordan Peterson is he rose to fame, at least in kind of the modern parlance, with an interview with Cathy Newman. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever seen this interview. I've referenced it a few times as I've talked about Jordan Peterson. But Jordan Peterson, in this interview, was simply trying to promote 12 Rules for Life. And in this interview, if you could call it an interview, Cathy Newman, I believe she works for the BBC, she just comes at him. I mean, she just comes, both guns blaring, and he will say a comment and she'll say, "So what you're saying?" And she'll just respond with something completely unrelated. Or he will have spent a long time explaining what he thinks, and she will say, "So what you're saying?" And she'll completely skip his entire explanation and come right back to the starting point, and he'll be like, "No, no, I'm not saying that at all." And so I would encourage you, go watch it. It's about a half hour long. It's a thing of beauty. And so I want that in your mind because these are the types of things that Jordan Peterson has had to deal with. He has dealt with difficult people, crazy people, insane people, people who think they know more than they do, people who think they can take a guy who's done all this study and just take him to the mat when they don't know anything themselves. And so it's kind of a fascinating thing. Jordan Peterson was raised pretty much middle of nowhere, Canada, and I I get the impression he was kind of raised in a nominally Christian environment. He's not a Christian in the classical sense of the word. He may or may not believe in God. What he does is when you ask him that type of question, he's going to kind of look at you and be like, "Can anyone say they believe in God?" Because, and this is a really good point, if you say you believe in God and then you go out and intentionally sin or do the wrong thing, do you really believe in God? Because if you believe he sees everything and then you do stuff in secret, you don't really believe he's seeing you, or you're not afraid of him, which means you don't really believe in God like you say you do. And I'm guilty of that too. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's an interesting take that we need to appreciate for what it is. And so Jordan Peterson is kind of that. He's going to come from a kind of a Christianized worldview. He's going to appreciate what Christianity has brought to the table, and so that's what I appreciate about him. He's also going to come with a lot of science, and so he's going to kind of explain things from an evolutionary worldview. And so in chapter 1 of his 12 Rules for Life, he uses the evolution of lobsters to prove that hierarchies are a thing that predate humans by millions of years. Now, you guys know by watching my videos that I'm not an evolutionist. I never have been, never will be, unless someone comes up with some very convincing arguments. But I think it's a powerful argumentative tool to show that the serotonin uptake and the way the brain is wired in a lobster is actually wired for hierarchy. And if it truly is millions of years predating humans, then you can't blame the patriarchy for the way that lobsters are wired because it predates trees. And so again, now the Christian way of explaining that would be God has built hierarchies into everything. And so yes, you can use antidepressants on a lobster's brain. It works. It's crazy. And so you can use antidepressants on a lobster's brain because it's going to mirror a lot of the wiring that God does in other parts of the natural world, including the brain of humans. And so again, that's just kind of an introduction to Jordan Peterson. He is going to sometimes use salty language. There are times where it's appropriate. I don't use it myself. I just don't swear. But there are times where Jordan Peterson does, and I think it is actually somewhat appropriate. It adds the special punch to what he's trying to say. But what Jordan Peterson is going to do is he's going to use stories, he's going to use narratives, he's going to use folk tales, he's going to use science and psychology and history, and he's going to meld all those together, and he's going to use it to back up his points. And so there are times where I realized this recently when I was listening to his new book. I couldn't even remember what the topic of the chapter was because he's going off on this story and that story and that story and that story and that story. And then I come back and I'm like, what was this chapter again? Oh, it's all about ideologies or, whatever. And I'm like, okay, all these stories make sense now. But there are times where he goes off and 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 off. And you're like, I forget what you were talking about. I enjoy the story and I remember the story, but what were we talking about again? And so there are times where as you read his book, you're going to have to come back and you're going to have to double check what the title of the chapter was and go, Okay, you're 3 points in a poem. Yeah, you're like 24 points and 4 scientific studies and 3 clinical finishing. Okay. So as you read Jordan Peterson, remember what the chapter's about, and that'll benefit you greatly, guys. I hope you're enjoying what we've done so far. I know it's really still in the introductory phases, but again, I hope you guys enjoy this review of 12 Rules for Life. Please tune in for more. We're going to keep posting more and more of this content, and I will catch you guys next time on the Janus Project.